Hi, I'm Rachel, and welcome to Do You Mindful. This week, I want to talk about thoughts. I want to talk about this because obviously thoughts are something we all have and sometimes struggle with. And I want to try and talk about a different way to conceptualize thoughts that maybe you haven't really thought about before. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is inspired by a book I just read called The Space Within by Michael Neill. And this book is super interesting and lays everything out super succinctly. So if what I speak about today is interesting to you, then I highly recommend this book. Have you ever had a thought that was really troublesome or bizarre to you? Something that you have no idea why it popped into your head, but there it was? Have your thoughts ever been so crippling to you that you are second guessing every single moment of your life? Well, so do a lot of people. Obviously, we all have thoughts about many different things. We have positive thoughts, we have negative thoughts, and we have neutral thoughts. Since our thoughts are the only voice that communicates with us internally, we really tend to believe the content of our thoughts. We believe this content very, very willingly, and sometimes too willingly. Naturally, we assume that all of our thoughts are ours. We assume that because a thought is in our head, it is something that is true about us or about our surroundings or about whatever we're thinking about. And this isn't necessarily true. Our brain makes sense of the outside world through our thoughts. But we aren't necessarily seeing the world through an accurate lens. We're seeing the world through the lens created by our thoughts, which tends to be very biased and warped and twisted and not really an accurate representation of the world around us. And oftentimes, having these thoughts themselves are very troubling, and we get really caught up in why we're thinking the way we do, and this is problematic and creates a lot of anxiety. In the book that Michael Neill wrote, he speaks about how in his college years he really struggled with suicidal ideation. He thought about taking his own life every single day, all day, to a point where it was out of control. And he suffered a psychotic break because of this. And after his psychotic break, he came to the realization that he doesn't have to think about taking his own life. These thoughts are popping up in his head, but maybe they're not his. If you're having unpleasant thoughts or strange thoughts or thoughts about things that you really don't want to be thinking about, maybe you don't have to. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but when we can realize that the thoughts we're having are just our brain trying to make sense of the world and maybe they don't belong to us, then we become much less fixated on the content that these thoughts have. And when we acknowledge that our brains and our thoughts are sometimes unreliable narrators, then we can take a step back and maybe not identify so much with the thoughts that we're having. Sometimes, obviously, thoughts are beneficial and they're meant to protect us, but maybe a lot of the time there isn't protecting to be done, and our brain is on overdrive, compensating, and speaking unnecessarily. When we do catch ourselves having unpleasant thoughts, knowing that our brains can be unreliable narrators, we can stop and say, okay, do I want to engage with this thought? Is this something that is helpful to me? Or is it something that is hurting me? And if it is something that's hurting you, maybe it could serve you to let this thought go. I know that this whole idea of just choosing what thoughts to accept and not to accept is really difficult to grasp and also really difficult to put into practice, but basically all I'm trying to say is the thoughts that you're hearing in your head all day long aren't facts. Thoughts are not facts. And when you realize this and take this into account when you are having troublesome thoughts, then it's easier to come to grips with those thoughts and to let them go. And sometimes letting thoughts go is what you need to do in order to move on and make the most of your life. So basically, all I'm trying to say is when you have thoughts and they're driving you crazy, take a second look at them and decide for yourself whether those thoughts are facts, because odds are they're not. And odds are it's your brain playing tricks on you and trying to protect you, but really making you feel worse. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully you have gained a new perspective on the life inside of your brain after watching this. But if not, then that's okay too. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next Monday. Thanks, guys. See ya.